Alright, in this video I want to start off with a model from chapter 2 that we covered in the previous video and the slides, but I want to do it on paper because what we didn't talk about is the distinction between a workaholic and a leisure lover in the same model. And I think this is important to contrast because it's sometimes easy to think about these two as separate individuals, but really the same individual can go back and forth between these at different points in their life. Let's begin by reiterating that on the horizontal axis we have leisure, hours, and below that we have the work hours. 17 hours of leisure is 7 hours of work. 16 hours of leisure is 8 hours of work. There's only 24 hours in a day, so they add up to that. On the vertical axis, we have the income. Now, let's first look at the leisure lover. The leisure lover is someone that has a steep indifference curve. Why? This means that if you give a leisure lover more leisure, they're willing to trade off a lot of income. This leisure lover, for an extra hour of leisure, is willing to trade off I0 to I2, this amount here. In contrast, if we switch over to the workaholic, that same increase in leisure, this workaholic is only willing to trade off I0 to I1, a much smaller amount of income. Why the difference? Well, it could be that at one point in your life you have a situation where you're maybe sick, or you are taking care of a loved one, you injured yourself, or maybe you've come up with a hobby that you're just passionate about. In that case, you're a leisure lover. An extra hour of leisure means you're willing to trade off a lot of income. And at other parts of your life, you might find that your job is going good, you're excited to go to work, you don't have a lot to do outside of work, and you feel like you're moving up. As a result, an extra hour of leisure, not willing to give up as much income. And even though we have different steepnesses here, it is still true that for both the leisure lover and the workaholic, when they get more leisure, their marginal rate of substitution diminishes. Another way of putting it is, for both of them, the more leisure they have, the less they value it, and therefore the less they're willing to trade off in income. But that's illustrated as the convex shape of a particular curve, not in the different steepnesses between the curves. Now let's shift gears and look at how income can be illustrated in our leisure income model. Here we've got 0 to 24 hours of leisure on the horizontal, and we've got income per day on the vertical. Right away we can identify that because the vertical intercept is $240, the wage is $10. Remember, 240 divided by 24 hours of work, 0 leisure, is $10 per hour. That means for every hour this person pursues leisure, they give up $10 in income. We also learned that the tangency of the indifference curve and the budget constraint will be the choice for leisure and income. This person will choose 16 hours of leisure, they will work 8 hours, and they will earn an income of 8 times 10, which is not illustrated, but $80 right here. Right? That is the highest total of utility this person can achieve given their budget constraint. So what happens if this person experiences an increase in income? More specifically, an increase in non-wage income. Now, there's many sources of this we'll talk about later on, but for now, let's just say that one of their grandparents decides they're going to give them an allowance of $60 a day. Right away, this budget constraint that previously reflected their options now has shifted up by $60 at every point. Meaning no matter how much leisure they take, they're going to have $60 more in income at every point. Just take a couple examples. If they choose 24 hours of leisure, well, they have no work income because they're not working, but they still get $60. So this moves up to $60. And then another point would be if they have zero leisure. In this case, they would be working 24 hours a day. Previously, they would have earned $240 from that. But now, with the $60 augmentation, they can get to $300. In other words, the entire budget constraint shifts up. And this is going to open up new possibilities. Note that this point now, U1, is an inferior point. There is an indifference curve that is higher up that will enhance the total utility of this person. And we can see that. Here is the new indifference curve that this person can reach with their new budget constraint. Same principle, they go from a tangency before the augmentation of $60 a day, U1, to a tangency after the augmentation of $60 a day, U2. They're now at a higher indifference curve, and therefore they are experiencing more utility, more happiness. You'll also note that they have chosen a different allocation of time. At U1, without the $60 a day from Grandpa, they were choosing 16 hours of leisure, but now they're choosing 17. This is somewhat predictable in the real world. If you had a friend that said they were getting a daily allowance now from their grandparents, you might be able to predict that they're going to pursue more, not the same or less leisure. Which means an increase in non-labor income causes an income effect that leads to work hours falling, an inverse effect on labor supply. Magnitude matters. $60 a day in this case caused an extra hour of leisure. But we can probably imagine a point where Grandpa is so generous that the hours of leisure goes to 24. We'll talk about that later. We just illustrated how a non-wage income can create a change in the leisure work allocation. Now we're going to look at how changes in wages can lead to changes in the leisure work allocation. When wages change, you're going to get two effects. There is an income effect, and there is a substitution effect. Let's start with the income effect. As wages go up, a person that is working will experience a higher income. That higher income will then make them desire more leisure. The underlying assumption here is that leisure is what's called a normal good. Normal goods are goods that people want more of when they get more income. You may have studied this concept in your introductory econ classes, where a normal good is going to increase in demand when incomes go up. Here, leisure is a normal good, so people are going to want to enjoy leisure as their income goes up. Thus, higher wages cause people to work less. The substitution effect, in contrast, causes a decrease in leisure when wages go up. Why? Because when wages go up, the alternative to working, which is leisure, becomes more costly. I always like to say, if you're at home sitting on the couch and you're watching the wages that you could earn in the marketplace increase, sitting on that couch becomes more and more expensive. And what do when the cost of something goes up? We substitute away from that. And in this case, the alternative is working. So you have two effects working in opposite directions. As wages go up, the income effect is driving people to work less, and the substitution effect is driving people to work more. So what is the net effect? Well, it depends on the individual. If the substitution effect dominates, then we would expect as wages go up, labor supply would increase. On the other hand, if the income effect dominates, then we would expect as wages go up, that labor supply would decrease. One thing to keep in mind is that the income effect only influences the decision making of people that are already participating in the labor force. If wages go up and you're not working, it has no impact on your income. In contrast, the substitution effect influences everybody, whether they're working or not. If you're sitting on that couch and you're not working, you're watching the wage go up. The cost of sitting on that couch is increasing. And there is a strong incentive as that occurs to go out and get a job. This is going to help us understand why, generally speaking, the substitution effect dominates the income effect in the labor markets as a whole. And as a result, when wages go up, more often than not, we get a positive response to labor supply. Now let's illustrate this process in our model. Again, we've got our budget constraint, and we have our initial tangency at the highest indifference curve, meaning this person will take 16 hours of leisure, work 8 hours, and make $80 a day. Imagine that this person experiences a pay increase from $10 to $15. You can see that increase in wages by the pivot at 24 hours of leisure and rotation up to $360 as the vertical intercept. Remember, 24 hours of work times 10 is $2.40, but 24 hours of work times 15 is $300.60. So this person can now reach a higher budget constraint than was possible before. And that is exactly what they will do. They will find the indifference curve, higher indifference curve, that is just tangent to the new budget constraint. In other words, they will move from this tangency, U1, to this tangency, U2, as a result of that increased wage. What will be the effect of this? Well, in total, or net effect, they will go from 16 hours of leisure to 15 hours of leisure, meaning they're actually going to work 1 more hour as a result of this higher wage. Before we proceed to the details, understand that that means the substitution effect dominates the income effect, because the substitution effect of a higher wage says they're going to work more. The income effect says they would work less. In this case, they ended up working more, going from 16 to 15 hours of leisure, and thus 8 to 9 hours of work. We can decompose the changes that occur into both the income effect and substitution effect. And to do that, we create a hypothetical scenario. But let's save that analysis for the next video.